So here we are playing Power Grid. After determining player order, Black ends up putting the bids up first. Now they put a lot of things up. Not sure if I have the order completely correct. I think they started off with this garbage plant. And they tried to get that through at 6. Yellow bought it for 7. It's kind of cool because nobody else is using garbage right now. So it's, in a more expensive plant, but the feeling was, well, if I just want to add one, it might be one of the better choices, especially since we're going early in the turn. We may not be able to buy the commodities at anywhere near the current price. It may cost just as much as the garbage. Let's buy this cheap plant. What went next? Next went this nuke here. Same kind of thinking, except that it produces 2 energy. And not at a bad price at all at this point. At about the lowest price that the first player is going to see anything happening. Actually, someone late in the game picked it up because it's still not a terribly bad price for them. They've got this dual plant, but they're using two commodities to fuel it. So this was an upgrade for them. Maybe not the best thing they could have gotten if they had waited around, because they do go late in the order. The third one was this dual coal for 5 energy. That's a nice amount of production. And that ended up going for, I think, 29 bucks. And Black said, okay, look, I'll go with the dual oil for that. Now, he probably could have gotten that for $1 less, maybe $2 less, because the only other person who was bidding in this was Blue, and he went at 27. But Black was saying, I can't risk it. I know that 29 held up. It still might not have, because it's the second shot, but whatever. So now Black's done with his auctions, and other people who've bought do not get to auction anything off. So we're on Green's turn. Got to turn up another card. We've had some other new ones come up, and this one shows up right there. It's a nuke for 3, and that's making this one look somewhat obsolete. Alright, well, we'll see what Green and Blue do, if anything. They don't have to actually put something up to bid, but if they put it up to bid, they must at least bid the minimum price. So Green, who's low on money and hasn't bid on anything, actually passed. They didn't want to play anything. Blue picked up. They couldn't quite afford this kind of cool nuke plant, and there's a better one right after it. So they picked up 1 extra production with a cheap old oil plant, and they can still expand off that. They think they'll make more money by following that kind of strategy than by building a plant that they don't have capacity, they don't have consumers for yet. We get to draw 1 more, and it's the highest on the list. A very, very powerful nuke plant. And now we go to buying the raw materials, and I'll take care of that. I'm not sure everybody's going to buy to their maximum this time. Some people have learned a bit of a lesson from that. So the materials were purchased. I kind of wish you purchased the materials and did your builds at the same time. I know that would probably give a slight edge to the people who went earlier, in the sense that they might purchase materials and then realize that they're boned out of a city due to expansion. But I may just start playing that way in order to reduce the thinking time. Because here's what I have to do now. When I buy my materials, I have to figure out how much I need to spend on expansion to make that work. But when if I bought both, and then I have to go back and figure out where I want it to expand again. Mainly a problem in Solitaire, but to tell you the truth, this is a problem anytime I play a game. If I have a decision I had to make in the past, and then I come back to it and have another time to think. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing now. I doubt that would happen in something this light, but it certainly happens in Age of Renaissance, where I plan everything out, and then I can't remember what my plan was by the time it comes time to buy advances. In this, it just doesn't seem to make that much difference to combine the two steps. I see very little effect to it, so I'm probably going to end up doing that. What we've got, so for example, Green had to decide, if I'm going to expand, I can't buy many raw materials, and they only bought one. That's what they could afford. But now I have to count the money and think all over again, and that sucks. We got some people, obviously Red is planning on expanding because they only bought a nuke, and they'll probably cut it so that they can just get to Detroit. Blue should be expanding. Yeah, they got enough cash they can expand. They have a lot of choices, and here they're going to have first option. They've got to kind of decide, do they want to go right into Birmingham, which is cheapest and not that bad from there, or do they want to jump to Raleigh for the shot into Norfolk and Washington and all that? Really a hard call for them, and one that Yellow faces as well. If Blue doesn't take Raleigh, does Yellow want to? Spend a little more now, but because of the positional advantage. Because in Yellow's case, nobody's going to make it to Tampa. They got to go through so many hoops to get there. It's just not worth it. There's better places for anyone else to expand. So they have this cheap thing in their background. Blues is a little harder. Birmingham isn't too bad. Knoxville, on the other hand, is right in a challenge. Probably not worth taking. But the Raleigh, Norfolk, and Washington might be worth getting to, because eventually that gets them into the Northeast. Philadelphia and New York, which are going to be very much cheaper to expand into, even though they're the second person coming in there. And then Black, Black did something kind of neat. They bought extra commodities. They're not going to be able to expand a city. So they're just going to run their old plant to run this. And I think to tell you the truth, Purple may have done the same thing. They could either buy commodities or expand, and expanding makes no sense without the commodities. All it does is bones you in the turn order, unless there's some tactical advantage, and they're kind of off on their own out in the Texas area. All right, let me do the expansion, and maybe the bureaucracy. I'll come back somewhere. So payouts were made. Nobody built a city that they couldn't power up. Yeah. Yellow made a hoard of money, that means. They made $44, whereas the people with 3 cities all made 33, and with with 2 cities made 33, and with 1 made 22. Expanded the commodities. Coal has gotten cheap again. Oil, not bad. Garbage is getting cheaper. Uranium is getting cheaper. There just aren't enough demand for those, and the people who bought them certainly do not want to buy them up and drive the price up, because they're the only person in the market. So they just want to buy what they need, if that. So now the last thing we do is we burn a card and draw a new recycling plant. Order of play. Yellow's in first. Let's look. Purple's going to be last. What about the others? Black's got a 26. That's the next one in my view. Purple. Well, purple's low on cities. Green, red, and blue. That's this side of the table. Alright, that makes it easy. Red's got that big nuke. Blue. And then green. Alright. Well, we'll be starting a third turn then. It's difficult to remember what happened. I just did the whole auction phase. in the order. Yellow went first. They managed to get this big nuke up, and they bought it at base price. Just nobody else had the cash on hand to buy that. It wasn't clearly a great deal for other people, but they thought it was a really good deal for them. We'll see how that turns out. But then we go to black, got to put something up. They passed instead. So one of the things they're starting, if you don't have a desire for something, you can't put it up because you might get stuck with it. You can't try to force people to buy something in this. So it's not like some of the other auction games one I played recently, damned if I remember what it was, Industria, where you get to keep the cash, or for that matter, High Frontier, where you get to keep the cash if somebody buys something. In this instead, all you're doing is making it available. I like that mechanism better, actually, and maybe less cute in terms of the game prospect, but for things that you're researching, you should have to be paying to get them, no matter what. I just don't know if this mechanism or the High Frontier one makes the most sense. I don't know if an auction does at all in there. All right. Red. Red also did not want to do anything. They're fairly happy with what they're sitting on. Which brought us to blue. And blue kicked up this thing, which green bought for 17. Blue wanted it for 16. They weren't willing to pay a penny more. Okay, fine. Right? Ah, yes. Then blue decided, okay, well, if I can't have that, I'll take this one. And they paid the 31 bucks. Nobody's willing to invest that much in that either. That looks a lot less valuable than the big nuke plant. But hey, what have you? Maybe coal will go out. I mean, it's kind of cheap right now, so I don't know. And they'll be going late in the order, or fairly late, so they may be able to get coal reasonably cheaply. The basic conception, though, here is some people, blue was able to do this because they already have their commodities set up for this turn. They're not going to expand into a territory. That was a big decision not to go to Norfolk. And they're not going to buy more raw materials in any quantity. They might buy a coal or an oil, but they can't, really crank this stuff out. All right, well, we'll see where we go, but a lot of people are up at that 3 factories, which means they have to start discarding factories if they want to improve their production that way. Well, there's no other way, really. I mean, some of them aren't using their factories fully, so we'll see how that also works out. For example, this guy has tremendous productive capabilities, and he's in one city. So we're going to move. I'm going to do a combined raw materials building phase, like I said. I think that's going to work fine. All right. So we see where the decisions have gotten people. Purple bought up some more materials, and, well, actually, I don't know if they actually did. I think they did because they were cheap. But more importantly, they expanded into 2 more areas. This way they'll be able to produce at 3 instead of the 1 that they were at. The coal was cheap, so they bought up some extra with that. Green. Green bought 2 oil, 1 more than they need, and did an expensive expansion into San Francisco. They've got an even more expensive one up to Portland. This West Coast is tough. I don't think it was a good starting area, even though it gave them some cheap early starts. I think that's going to really hurt them. They should be over here instead as a last choice or something. They're realizing the topography is really hurting them here. Of course, they're alone, but it's expensive to expand. Being alone isn't that great if you can't get anywhere useful. Our next one is, after green, blue. Blue found that they already had the materials they need to run their two places. They couldn't buy any additional materials at a good cost. So they're just, trying to pay for this expensive new plant that they can't run yet. That sounds like power companies. Red, I believe they picked up uranium. And they expanded as well into Pittsburgh, kind of putting the threat on Black. And you see already what happened. Black expanded big time into Washington and Norfolk. And they still are underutilizing this thing. They spent, that thing produces for another city still. Of course, they also have this as a backdrop. And then yellow. Yellow was stuck in an ugly position. They couldn't expand. They were $2 short. Buying that nuke, and they knew this when they did it, meant no expansion. But for a single nuke power, they can power all this up. These other plants are kind of more questionable, and they'll try to obsolete them. They bought an extra nuke because they're afraid that, well, they're not terribly afraid of this, but they don't know if it's going to get, they're going to get a choice that's cheaper than $10. Nukes are becoming expensive now. With somebody, with them being the second person in the market, somebody else might jump in and want another one. So they want to make sure that they can run this at a reasonable price. They should still make pretty good money. They're no longer in the lead though, player order wise, etc. So now we go into the bookkeeping and everything. Everybody's going to pull their money, and we're going to see a lot because Black is able to run 4 cities, so they're going to be pulling 54 in now. And a lot of people, everybody but Blue, is at that 44 range. Blue's down at 33. All right. So the prices of the non-nuclear raw materials are plummeting here. Basically, nobody bought much last turn in terms of raw materials. They were using stockpiles largely. So we've got coal all the way down to 1 for the first person to buy it. Oil in the 3 range, garbage in the 4 range. Of course, the nukes are still up at 10. And now, because of the drop of the conventional fuels especially, but even the recycling, only one person's recycling now. The nukes look less valuable, partially because someone sat on one, but otherwise also. I think people are going to have a hard time. We see a lot of production here, and pulled up a new one of these things, another windmill. I bet you that goes pretty fast. Just, too free production with no input. It's such the green solutions seem like such a good deal. Now, it's hard to tell because eventually this is going to probably be a penalty, and that one too maybe. When you want your power plants to produce enough for all of your things. Now, speaking of which, only Blue and Black have been assigned location-wise. 7, 11, 16. Looks like yellow, purple, 28, 25. Red and green. But it's you've got definitely more productive capability than you have the need. So Black has 7 productive capability and only 4 cities hooked up. Yellow has 3 cities hooked up, and one of their plants produces 4. They're at 7. So I may have not balanced things well here, right? But I would rather have the productive capability and be able to grow into it than build cities and not be able to power them. I'm not sure why, because they're sort of the same kind of wastage, right? Somehow in my head that seems more sensible though. Red is right on target, but I don't feel terribly like Red's doing all that well. I feel like Black, with their excess, is doing better. And in some ways, see, both things are limited commodities, right? The power plant you want if it's the one you really want, you're not going to be able to find another one like it, because if there's another one like it, it's no longer the one you want, probably, because you won't have that nice balance on the commodity exchange. Having the only nuke was very cool. Having one of two nukes is a lot less cool, especially when yours produces half as much. And likewise with the territories, though, they're also a rare commodity, and you have to grab the one you want, because it's going to cost you more to get wherever, somewhere you can expand to. It really doesn't matter where, but it's going to cost you more to get there, and you might want to be grabbing that. So we see where, blue has kind of cut yellow off here. But then black said, this isn't going to be that big an advantage for you, blue. So I don't know. There's just so many little things in the balance here. All right, I'm going to load this one.